Birds 365 on the first day of draft week. We are getting that much closer to the NFL's draft on Thursday night. And here to help us break it down is a guy who does it day in and day out for Pro Football Network, Ian Cummings, who has jumped on with us previously and always done a great job. We have faith he will do so again today. Ian, very simple first question. What did you score on the S2 cognitive test? Because now
100, obviously. No, I don't know, man.
When did it become mandatory that everyone who even mock drafts for a living must take this test to see how cognitive they are? I'm sorry. This is making me crazy the week before the draft. Mm-hmm. Give us your thoughts on the test, how it's implemented, how it should be judged, what piece of the puzzle it is. This stuff is just absolutely nuts, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's been a lot to handle, especially in, the week leading up to the draft, right? 2 weeks away from the draft. It's a little too close, and it feels almost like, we know it's smokescreen season. We know teams are releasing certain tidbits of information for certain reasons, right? So it's tough to take it at full stock. But it's also interesting because we know that there are results going back to Drew Brees, right? We know that they've been doing it for a while.
Can I take a time out here? And I don't want to get too sidetracked. Supposedly this test was created 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. So Drew Brees took the test in his 13th year in the season.
Yeah.
Do I care what his number was, what his score was, if he's taking it at age 35 after playing 13 years in the league?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, that's an element too. Like sometimes guys take it after that and they've had time to kind of hone their skills in the league, like you said, so in the heat of the moment. So it's tough to take it at full stock, at full face level because of that, man. But I think it is important to at least consider it, right? I don't want to toss it off to the side completely because cognition scores, Brock Purdy scored the highest score last year, and he obviously, did pretty well in that San Francisco offense. Now, it's also important to note that San Francisco offense is very quarterback friendly. I mean, we've seen, mid-level quarterbacks succeed because Kyle Shanahan is so good at crafting that kind of offense. So there are so many different variables to take into account. And with CJ Stroud in particular, it's been very, very overwhelming because the tape is vehemently against any conclusions that you would draw from his S2 score. People look at the S2 score, the rumored S2 score, we don't even know if it's confirmed, and they say, oh, he's not a good processor. Well, on tape, he's probably one of the best processors in this QB class. He's very good at anticipating windows, very good at reading coverages and, keeping his eyes downfield and making quick decisions. So, I'm not sure how much stock to put into it. You don't want to disregard it entirely, but it is just a piece of the puzzle, and it's important to keep that universal worldview on hand here.
Yeah. Well, I think, you can't leak the Wonderlic scores anymore, Ian, so they found something else to leak. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to call it a grip, but it's kind of a grip because, as you said, it's not the test. I mean, I'm sure they did a wonderful job. A couple Vanderbilt neuroscience guys, I'm sure they did a wonderful job trying to create
information. And the thing with information is that teams can weaponize it,
exactly.
Exactly. So you have to be careful.
Yeah. So, we laud them for the predictive model, but I'm with you. I have to take it all with a grain of salt. I did joke that I scored 11 billion on the S2 cognitive skill. So we'll see. I don't want to brag, but we'll your thoughts on this, since we're talking quarterbacks, and obviously that's very important here for Philadelphia, not because they need a quarterback. They just paid a quarterback $250 million. But the more quarterbacks that go in that top 9 pushes the better positional players down the board. You mentioned silly season. Now there's talk, hey, somebody's looking up to trade the 2 to get Will Levis. He might go outside the top 10. Where are you with this quarterback class, specifically that top 4? And even Hendon Hooker, if you want to throw him in.
Yeah, my conclusion from the tape, my personal individual conclusion has always been that those top 4 are worthy of consideration in the top 10. I think Bryce Young, it pretty much looks like he's going to go number 1 at this point. CJ Stroud is my personal QB1, even with the S2 score. It's one of those things where
you're going out on a limb.
But here's the thing.
I'm not there with you, buddy. I've been since last year's draft. You and I are going to live and die with CJ Stroud. I'm good with that.
Hey, here's the thing, though. They're basically QB 1A, 1B, and 1C on my board. They're clustered together at the very top. Stroud, Anthony Richardson is QB2, and then Bryce Young is QB3. But, I would be good with any of them at number one overall. I think, there's arguments for both. Stroud, again, has the natural talent, but he's also a very good processor, the most accurate and precise QB in the class. Richardson's tools are out of this world, and, he's shown flashes of the necessary processing capacity in a small sample size. So, again, the talent is worth investing in. And then Bryce Young, the size is an issue, but when it comes to having that it factor and staying composed in chaotic situations, there's no one better than him. So, I think all three of those guys are worthy of top 10 consideration. And if they fall to a certain point, you have to ask yourself as a team, if I can upgrade at the quarterback position, would I benefit from passing on this guy? And what if he goes on to pan out, right? It's a missed opportunity for you. So I think, especially in A-Rich's case, because the tools are just so astronomical, it's one of those things where if you pass on him, you might really come to regret it down the line. So, and then even Levis, he's got a rocket arm. You definitely didn't see the type of linear progression that you wanted to see from him in 2 years, but there was some instability in that Kentucky offense too. So, you don't want to make excuses for him, but you do need to take the context into account too. Bottom line, we know he's smart off the field. We know he can learn, right? So it's one of those things where if he has the necessary talent and the necessary toughness, again, get him in that room. I think at a certain point, the Titans to me at number 11 feel like it's floor. We've been hearing that they are considering trading up for a QB. So if a QB falls to them without having to trade up, that seems like a home run for them. But I think all four of those guys are worthy of top 10 capital. Hendon Hooker, to me, is not a first-round pick. I would take him on mid to late day 2, but I think people are kind of extrapolating the production a little bit too much. To me, he's coming from a very simplistic offense. He's older, right? So it's not an issue of the age, but he might be set in his ways a little bit from a developmental perspective. So, you need to take those things into account. But as far as the QB class goes, I think 4 should go in the top 10. Will 4 go in the top 10? We'll see. The draft has a way of surprising us, but I think that's how it should be if you value the QB position and talent at that position.
Older and injured with Hendon Hooker, and I know that they believe he's going to come back and be exactly the same, but that's a little risky to be using a first-round pick on a guy who's coming off as severe an injury as the one he suffered. Sure. All right, I want to keep the quarterback conversation and bring the Eagles into it. Completely hypothetical question, because I'm going to ask you about a potential pick that the Eagles don't even have yet. 5th round. The second round of day 3 in the NFL draft, which of course the Eagles don't have a 5th round. They don't have a 4th to trade back from. They don't have a 6th to trade up to. So we're talking about as hypothetical as it gets. But if Howie Roseman does his draft day thing and adds and swaps and picks up picks, someone in about the 5th round, a backup quarterback. Jalen Hurts just became a $250 million guy who was drafted as a safety net for Carson Wentz. Did okay a couple of years later. And I'm not suggesting this next guy, 5th rounder, as compared to a second, will do the same. But the Eagles have a track record of picking a quarterback who is their safety net, who they think they can develop in the quarterback factory. Who's the best guy to fit the Philadelphia Eagles as they are, who you think will be there in the 5th round?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think part of it does depend on how the board falls in day 3. Some of these guys that I'm going to mention could go in round 4, right? So especially on day 3, the valuation tends to be a little, spread out more, right? A team might value one guy in round 7, but if another team values him in round 4, that's where he's going, right? So, it's tough to take in a lot of variables, but 3 guys that come to mind for me right off the bat: Jake Haener from Fresno State. This guy's a gamer. 2 of these guys are really gamers. They all have competitive toughness. I think that's one thing that you really look for in a backup. That's one of the prerequisites for me. And Haener's definitely got that. He's a very, very high energy competitor, but in the pocket too. Very good processor. He can anticipate windows in the intermediate range outside the numbers. He's got enough arm talent to make it work. He's accurate. He's shown that he can command an offense, a pass-heavy offense. So, and he's actually a pretty good athlete for his size too. So I'm a big fan of him. Clayton Tune from Houston. This is a guy who's actually a very underrated athlete. He's around 6'3", 220. He ran a 4.6, had a 37.5-inch vertical. So, this guy has enough short area bursts to move around and evade rushers in the pocket. But at the same time, he's tough. He's composed. He can rip it down the field. I think he's got a little bit better arm talent than Haener. And, he's, again, that guy who just comes in and he is a gunslinger. He's willing to sell himself out for big plays if you need him to. So I think that toughness, again, is very valuable in a backup. And then one more, I especially like his fit behind Jalen Hurts. Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA, experienced, very mobile. He's got elite creation capacity, a little bit volatile. He never quite reached, the ideal level of development as a starter, even with multiple years as a starting quarterback. But, I do think that athleticism, that creation capacity that he does provide, at the very least, provides a baseline level of utility as a backup quarterback.
Yeah, I love Dorian as well for the Eagles. I mean, we've all talked about Marcus Mariota being a bit because you don't have to change the offense, even though it's not going to be as effective. Would be so if you want to go in that direction and continue sort of the same theme, he would make a lot of sense for me on day 3. I apologize in advance, and you probably heard Jody and I going back and forth about running back. Running back has been an obsession for Eagles fans in this draft because of Bijan Robinson. So I think we all will agree he's a really good prospect. Now, number one, I don't want to compare him to this year because he's clearly the best running back. But if you compare him to years past, whether it's Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, where is he sort of overall as a prospect? And did the Eagles need a big time running back for Jalen Hurts in what he does as the +1 for the running game?
Yeah. Well, as a prospect, Bijan is advertised. He is up there with Saquon, in my opinion. I think Saquon was a bit better athlete, explosiveness-wise, speed-wise, but I do think Bijan is the better runner. So I think he's in that tier, that caliber as a prospect. I don't think the hype is overblown. I think he's exactly as good as people make it out to be. The size, the contact balance, but then the creation ability, the short area elusiveness for his size, the flexibility between his cuts. He's always in control, and he's a physical finisher. He's a phenomenal receiving threat. He checks every box that you want. So he's a top 3 prospect for me, if you're not taking positional value into account. So I'm a big fan of his. That said, though, you bring up a great question for the second one. Do the Eagles need a runner like that? They signed Rashad Penny in free agency. He's struggled to stay healthy for sure. And I think that's why you want to get a running back in, day 2 or early day 3 in this class if you can. But Penny, when he has been healthy, I think he's been one of the NFL's leaders in rushing yards over expectations. So very efficient runner when he is healthy, and he's behind a very, very good offensive line. So I think getting Penny doesn't preclude you from taking a running back in this class, but what it does do is it allows you flexibility. You don't have to take Bijan if you don't want to. And, there are some quality players that could be there for the Eagles. Nolan Smith, maybe an edge rusher, defensive tackle, so I think that doesn't force them into a corner, and you can wait until day 2. And on day 2, there are some very good options. I think the Eagles running scheme, especially the blocking talent that they have, allows them to be versatile. I like Tank Bigsby from Auburn in particular. He's around 5'11", 210, 215 again. So he's got workhorse size, but he's explosive in space. He's got that speed element to be a zone runner as well and get outside. But at the same time, too, he's another very flexible runner between the tackles, very good creator. So I think the versatility that he provides is very fun. Izzy Abanikanda, I know you mentioned Izzy Abanikanda, the Pitt running back. He's another guy who's very good between the tackles. He's not quite as good outside, so I think power and gap is what you're going to use him for. But, between the tackles, he is a no-nonsense runner. He gets upfield very efficiently. And he's another one who has very good size, around 5'10", 5'8", 217 pounds. So he is dense. He's a bowling ball out there, but then he's explosive too. He gears up instantly, game-breaking speed down the field. So his running ability, pure running ability between the tackles, is up there with some of the best in the class. And then Zach Charbonnet, you also mentioned, round 2 or round 3. He's another fun one. He's another guy who, he's a little stiff in his hips. He's a little lower on my board because of that. I don't think he quite has the elite lateral agility that you want. But another guy who's just so good at churning through contact. He gets upfield without any nonsense, any extra motion. And, once he hits contact, he's not going down for a little bit. He's a train out there, just kind of bowling through. So big fan of those guys. And there's a few others that kind of stand out. Kendre Miller is one, Tyjae Spears. There are a lot of options in this class. And I think that versatility, that flexibility, it's a good thing for the Eagles because they can play the board and get the guy who's best for them.
We could do another 20 minutes on running backs, but John and I already talked running backs. You gave us a rundown on running backs. So let's get into where the Eagles will probably draft anyway, and that's the trenches on the line. How many offensive linemen will be off the board before the Eagles pick at number 10? You got your mock, and if you're going to remock again sometime between now and Wednesday, fine. You could. Everybody's got till Thursday morning to put their last mock in. But as of right now, how many offensive linemen go before the Eagles pick?
It's tough, man. I've been I've been a proponent that this tackle class, while it is strong at the top, there's a lot of first-round guys. I don't know if there's any top 10 guys. So, I've always been of the mind that I think they fall outside the top 10. But we've been hearing that a team could be trying to trade up to number 3 with the Cardinals to get an offensive tackle. We've heard that maybe Paris Johnson Jr. is the guy in mind for that. I think you have to look at other positions when you're considering this. I pencil in the Lions as either Jalen Carter or corner at 6. Maybe Jalen Carter for the Seahawks at 5. Tyree Wilson, Will Anderson. We know that they're probably going to go top 10, and then maybe 3 or 4 quarterbacks too. So I don't think there's a lot of room for more than one offensive tackle to sneak into the top 10. I think there could be one potentially. Whether there's going to be 2 or 3 or 4, that's a little bit tougher to call. Now, the Bears maybe could take Darnell Wright at number 9. We know they need a natural right tackle, but I think at most you're getting 2. And even then, I think that's that's kind of, optimistic for that position group. I think the 10 to 20 range is where they start to come down the board more.
That every time in this time of year, I try to boil down the players I think the Eagles are interested in, potentially would take with their first round pick. They have 2 this year. And then I kind of whittle it down. I announced my official prediction on Wednesday, but you mentioned one of them, Nolan Smith, I think is a potential. Paris Johnson, if he falls, I think is a potential. Jalen Carter, I think, is the guy they would take if he somehow falls down. Christian Gonzalez, I think, is a wild card if he somehow falls down. Peter Skoronski probably would like to trade down a little bit, but he's in the category. And one other guy that they like.
John's going Bijan. Unbelievable. A 180 by John. No, all right.
No, I'm not going Bijan.
Damn.
One other guy they like, and the fans hate. I can't tell you how many people. They just jump down this poor guy's throat, and the vast majority, let's be honest, they haven't seen him play. Lucas Van Ness. Where are you with poor Lucas Van Ness as a prospect? There's a lot of projection there, but so I just want to get your thoughts on Lucas.
Absolutely. I'm big on his potential for sure. He's in my top 15. I'm a big fan of the upside that's there. I think he's a good pick at that point. I think, it's a lot of projection, right? People are going to say he never started a game at Iowa, and that's correct. He didn't, but also Iowa defers to veterans a lot. So I don't think it's a reflection on him. I think it's more just kind of how they've done things.
Yeah, he played more. He played
more. They rotated him a lot. Yeah. And here's the thing too. In 2021, he played 3-tech a lot. He was still dominating. I mean, this is a guy who's around 6'5", 272, 34-inch arms. So he's not quite that defensive tackle size, but he was still just plowing holes open on the interior. And then he plays on the outside too, and that elite power element is a big part of his game. I think he's still 21 years old. So he's got that size profile, that elite size profile. He's very young. I think there's still a lot of room for him to keep trending up and developing. And he's explosive off the line. He's got violent hands. And I think for the most part right now, he's a power dominant rusher, bull rushes, long arms, stuff like that. He still needs to kind of hone his counter game a little bit more. But I love the tools that you're working with, the combined power profile and the athleticism. And at the same time too, with taller guys, one thing that can be a struggle is really acquiring proper pad level, lowering your pads and kind of surging through with proper leverage. That can be an issue for taller guys, but for Van Ness, that is not an issue at all. He's so flexible. He so easily drops his pads, loads his hips, and gets full power exertion on his rushes. And that ease of leverage acquisition is one reason that I'm so much higher on him, because he does need to refine his hand usage, but dropping his pads and playing with the right amount of leverage is not an issue at all for him. It's so easy, comes so naturally for him. So that on top of the traits, I think is an accelerant for him to grow. I think right away on day one, he can be that battering ram for you at 3-tech, 4-eye, 5-tech, outside the tackle. And then as he continues to refine his hand usage, this guy can be a game breaker. I love the upside. I think he's still very early in his developmental track, and I'm very much in favor of that pick of 10 if they make it.
The only narrative that is more overhyped than Lucas Van Ness didn't start, and incorrectly so, is the S2 cognitive test. Those two. Yeah, I'll put both of those completely freaking aside, okay? Staying on the defensive line. If the Eagles don't necessarily get, and I guess if they take an edge guy, they could come back. Let's say they don't. Let's say they get an offensive lineman. The number 2 defensive tackle for me is Calais Cansey, the kid from Pitt, who is unfair. Here's another unfair narrative. Oh, he's the next Aaron Donald. Yeah, that's really fair. Compare him to the best defensive tackle in the rest of the national history of National Football League before he ever plays it down. Please stop. But he's a very talented player. Some comparisons say Pitt and slightly undersized and the like. If he's the number 2 DT, is there a chance he could fall all the way down to 30 and into the Eagles' lap? If they need to move up, how far do you think they're going to have to move up into the 20s to get him? How do you have Calais Campbell ranked coming into this draft, the Pitt DT?
Yeah, he's been, man. I mean, you mentioned expectations. People look at the Pitt logo on the helmet and then look at the undersized frame. It's like, oh, he's Aaron Donald 2.0. It's like, no, come on. Like, let's one thing.
Yeah.
I try to stay away from same school comps for that reason, because it can put unfair expectations on players. But I think with Kalijah Kancey, he is a very good football player. And I feel like we need to start with that, because anytime you have a massive outlier like this, you need to know, is he athletic enough to counteract that? Is he good enough at football to counteract that? And I think he is. He's a very explosive athlete off the snap. I mean, he broke the DT record for the 40-yard dash. I mean, unless you count Adebawore from Northwestern, which I count him.
I love it. I gotta play back you pronouncing his name, because
I've had a lot of practice, man. I've had a lot of practice.
Give it to us one more time.
Adebawore.
Yes.
He goes by Tommy. So, I mean, if you want to stick with Tommy.
He goes by what?
Tommy.
Tommy?
Yeah,
Tommy, can you hear me? Really? Oh, that's great. We're calling him Tommy from now on.
There you go. That's easier, right? But going back to Kalijah Kancey, I mean, he's a massive size outlier for sure. I think he's in the 2nd percentile in weight, the 1st percentile in arm length, right? So even Aaron Donald, he's undersized, but his arms are over 2 inches longer than Kancey's, I think. So, he's working with more leverage and lever power with those arms. I think with Kancey, it's going to be a bit of a transition for him going up against stronger interior blockers. I think you need a nose tackle alongside him to encumber those double teams and free up one-on-one opportunities for him. Luckily, the Eagles have that in Jordan Davis. But that said, I think Kancey, he grades just outside my top 30. So I wouldn't take him in the 20s to 30 range. I would wait a little bit longer. I would take Adebawore over him, just because I think the tools are a little bit more superior on the 3-tech spot. But Kancey, he's explosive. He's incredibly flexible. He's twitchy. He's got violent hands. What he lacks in length, he makes up for with that violent hand usage, a very, very vast pass rushing arsenal. I think if you're going to make Kancey work, you need to be flexible with him. Play him alongside that nose tackle, isolate one-on-one opportunities, maybe move him out to 4-eye and 5-tech on some snaps. I think you need to be flexible. You need to be open to moving him across the line and putting him in advantageous situations. It's a little rich for me. I would wait until 30. That said, I don't know if he's going to be there, because there are some teams who are very high on his ability as a football player. So I think, it's going to be tough. If you do want to take him, my gut feeling says he goes in that 20 to 30 range, I think, if he does go. So I would trade up maybe a little bit if you want him. But if you don't, if you're willing to look at other options too, I think Adebawore is a very good consolation prize at 30 if you want to stick there and take that value. So a lot of options. I think with Kancey, the thing is, moving him around the line, because that size is going to be a hindrance to the next level, as good of a football player as he is.
And got to talk about safety with you. I think that's a position the Eagles are going to look at really heavily on day 2. Every year there's 3 longtime scouts I talk to that have been very nice to me, and they give me sort of their top 10 at every position. And boy, I've never seen such wild disparity at the safety position this year. I mean, some guys like one guy and another guy hates him. It's wild. You usually have more sort of consistency, other than Brian Branch. I think, he's clearly at the top. I think he's a perfect fit for what the Eagles do, but I don't know if they're going to be in a position to get him. So if I ask you, I need a safety for the Vic Fangio scheme. So coverage more than, run support. You got to be able to mirror, play a little bit of slot. You don't have strong safety designations. It's pretty much interchangeable. Other than Brian Branch, who fits that definition the best?
Yeah, it's a tough one, man, because I do think, playing a little bit of slot, having the versatility to play in that role, if that's what you're looking for, I mean, this class does have a lot of that too. I think this class, and that's kind of the reason that evaluating this class has become so difficult, because so many of these guys did play a lot in the slots. Now you wonder, all right, well, can they play too high? Can they manage space? Do they have some single high experience, right? So, it's tough to parse through that, but, I do think if that's what you're looking for, this class definitely has it. I look to Illinois. There's two candidates for me, Jartavius Martin and Sidney Brown. I think both those guys could fit that definition. Both guys played in the slot at times. I think Martin a little bit more than Brown. Brown was more roaming in the box at times, so I think Martin might be a better fit for you. But this is a guy who's long. He's wiry. He's explosive, very twitchy athlete who can match guys out of the slot and cover them upfield. He's got recovery speed, very good playmaking instincts. And I think he jumped a 44-inch vertical at the combine. So that explosiveness checks out. This dude accelerates instantly out of his stance. So Jartavius, he goes by Quan. I think Quan Martin would be a very good pick in the day 2 range. I look to Antonio Johnson potentially at Texas A&M. If he's there in round 3, could be another good option for you. He's around 6'2", I think just under 200 pounds, but very explosive coming downhill. He was used in the box a lot at Texas A&M, especially in 2022, and he's really good in that role. He can miss tackles sometimes, but aggressive, physical playmaker who I think is trending up. But in 2021, people don't always go back to 21, but he played in the slot more that year. And he can man up guys for his size. He's got very good off-man technique. He's actually more fluid than you expect for his size, and he's physical. He'll get in your grill. He'll jam you. So I think he does have ability in that role as well. And then a couple others that stand out to me. I'll go one early day 3, one late day 3. Early day 3, Jay Ward from LSU is one that I'm a big fan of. He's around 6'1", but he's a former cornerback, actually. He's played on the boundary. He's played in the slot. He's played field safety. And he's very good in run support, matching guys and kind of covering range across the front. But he can man up guys too. He's very fluid for his size, very explosive. I think he had an 11-foot broad jump. And then late day 3, Rutgers safety Christian Izien is a favorite of mine in that range. If you can get him late, he's a little more compact. He's around 5'9", 200, I want to say. But he's another guy who's got experience in the slot. He's got experience all over. He tested very well. He was productive at a very early age in college, and at the Shrine Bowl too, he made some nice plays on the ball. He can manage space. He's very instinctive, flipping his hips and kind of managing positioning. And I think that he'd be a very good value option with that versatility that you're looking for. So those are a few options. I think this class is interesting because not a lot of traditional safeties, but if you know what roles to look for, there are guys to isolate and target.
All right, Ian, when the draft comes and goes, and Mr. Irrelevant this year is going to be taken by the Houston Texans, who I think are the most interesting team for the entire draft, starting at number 2 and going all the way through. They're going to be a story to tell. We're going to have to get John McMullen on next week after Houston does what it does. But they get Mr. Irrelevant. 259 players will be selected. And then depending on how many picks any team gets, trading in, trading out, adding picks, subtracting picks, somebody's going to come up with, oh, and by the way, this is the best undrafted draft class we've ever had in our life, because they're going to want that to be the case, because they're going to be reaching out for a lot of those guys. Eagles have hit on a bunch of those guys over the last couple of years, including a guy who's probably going to start at safety for them this upcoming year in Reed Blankenship. I draw that line at 259, and then there's everybody else. How good is everybody else? Is it a good year for undrafted free? Is it a deep overall made themselves eligible for draft class, or is this, yeah, you're going to be reaching. You're going to don't give them too big a signing bonus, because we got about 180 great, really good players, and the rest are reaches. How do you rate this overall eligible for draft class?
For sure. I think it is a good overall draft class. Okay. I think, it gets a bad rap sometimes because it is lacking at the top. There's not nearly as much blue chip talent as we're accustomed to seeing. That said, I think, I think the COVID year had an impact on this, because a lot of players that would have declared earlier ended up coming back and kind of adding an extra layer of depth to this class. And we're going to see that roll over next year too. But we're seeing a much deeper class. I think what it lacks on blue chip talent, it makes up for with depth in that 200 to 300, even 400 range. So, I think people don't always realize how small of a number 259 is. There's 259 picks, but there are a lot of draft eligible prospects in this class. And, there are good players who are going to go undrafted. And so there's always opportunity there. But I think this class, especially, there are players that I've isolated at every position. That's like, this guy might be available in the PFA pool. And if he is, he's one of the first calls I'm making. I think there's a lot of talent to be had in that pool. It's going to be interesting to see who falls, because there's always unexpected ones, right? But I think, even beyond those unexpected ones who are expected to be drafted, I think there's going to be a lot of talent to take advantage of in that UDFA pool.
Speaking of UDFAs, I'm going to end it there with the most boring question of all, and people know where this is going. At IC_draft, follow Ian Cummings on Twitter. Pro Football Network, as you can tell, does a tremendous job. Can even pronounce Tommy perfectly. Give it to us one more time.
Adedamiwa Adebawore.
There we go.
Yeah,
We're gonna just
I'm going with Addy.
Addy,
That's what
Addy.
Hey, that's a good one.
The Eagles need a punter, but they don't have a lot of draft picks. They're probably not going to take a punter. So give me the best punter you think is going to be undrafted, because they lost the Super Bowl because their punter couldn't properly situate the football. Give me somebody who can do it at an NFL level. Last year it was Ryan Wright out of nowhere. Came a pretty good NFL punter. Somebody like that for this year.
Yeah. I'll give a shout out to my guy Ali Hodgkinson over at PFN because he's a special teams expert. I always rely on him. You know, I go with non-special teams positions, but there are a few names that come to mind for me. If you're looking for efficiency, I think Adam Korsick of Rutgers is your option. If you want a guy with a leg, right? Bryce Behringer from Michigan State, he's got a really big leg. I think he's around 6'4", so he's got size, he's got a leg, he's got power. You know, and then Michael Turk from Arizona State is another one. You know, I got to speak to him at the Shrine Bowl. You know, he's a very well-spoken, you know, he's got good character, right? So I think getting him in that locker room would be good. Again, my guy, Ali, you know, he's the special teams expert, but those are a few names in the bottom of the board I think that, you know, you could target if they fall outside of the draft pool.
And wisely, none of this year's punters have been given the nickname the punt god, because I don't think they want to follow in the footsteps of the previous punt god, but that's just a guess on my part. Ian, great stuff. We appreciate it whenever you come on. Just listen to you describe the players. We know how much work you put into it. Thanks for sharing that with us. We'll get you on after the draft, bud. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Good to see you guys. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Our pleasure. Check out all his work at ProFootballNetwork.com. Does a great job for them and with us when he hops on with us. Ian coming on with us here on Birds 365.
I know the Eagles are gonna draft Tommy, by the way, Jody, just because they're gonna force me to
learn how to pronounce his name. Yeah. No, but I think you and I have heard the same things. Eagles like the kid.
Yeah, they do.
And number 30 is, if they don't get a defensive lineman with their first pick, a defensive lineman I think is damn close to a lock with their second pick. And he's a guy who fits right in that 30 range, trading up, trading down. He is a guy the Eagles do like, which means, yeah, we're both going to have to learn to pronounce his name if we're not going with Tommy or Addy. We're going to have to do some work to get ready for that. All right, coming back, Johnny Mac and I are going to spend a couple of minutes, and then John's going to exit stage left. He wants to get over to the NovaCare Complex. Jalen Hurts talking to the media at 10:30. Coming up in just about 20 minutes after Johnny leaves, I'll be joined by Paul Domwich, our bud from 33rdteam.com and writes for us here at JAKIBSports.com as well. Damo should jump in about 20 minutes, but more Birds 365 coming up next.